He's the kind of cop who's got an attitude, always walking with a swagger, always one step ahead. But today, things took a turn. Driving down the highway, this officer, known for his confidence, is caught speeding. No sirens, no emergency, just him and the open road. When the officer pulls him over, you'd expect him to act like any other driver, nervous or apologetic, right? But instead, he smirks and says something that leaves the officer stunned. What did he say? Was he trying to talk his way out of it, or was there something more to this encounter? Stick around because the response he gives might just blow your mind. This story takes a crazy turn, and you won't believe how it all plays out. Tune in to see how this officer's swagger turns into something you never saw coming. As the officer steps up to the window, he notices something odd. The driver doesn't seem fazed at all. In fact, he's almost relaxed, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel like he's just waiting for the next light to turn green. The officer, who's used to dealing with nervous suspects, furrows his brow. He's seen cocky drivers before, but something about this one feels different. He's not just a guy trying to talk his way out of a ticket. He's got this unshakable calm, like he's holding something back. "Do you know how fast you were going?" the officer asks, keeping his tone professional. But inside, he's starting to feel a little uneasy. The driver slowly turns his head, eyes meeting the officer's, and with a grin that's way too confident for the situation, he says, "I was going fast enough to get your attention, wasn't I?" The officer pauses, confused. What did that even mean? The officer's mind races. That line, "I was going fast enough to get your attention," sticks with him, nagging at the back of his thoughts. Was this guy just messing with him, or was there something deeper at play? He glances at the driver's rearview mirror, trying to catch a glimpse of anything unusual. But the car looks completely normal, no signs of anything suspicious. Still, something doesn't add up. "License and registration," the officer demands, his voice firm, but the tension between them is palpable. The driver slowly reaches into the glove compartment, almost theatrically slow, as if he's enjoying the moment. The officer watches every movement, but when the man hands over the documents, something catches his eye. The name on the license isn't one he recognizes, but the officer can't shake the feeling that he's seen this guy somewhere before. It's almost like déjà vu. "Where do you think you're going in such a hurry?" The officer presses, trying to break the eerie calm. The man leans back in his seat, his grin widening. "Let's just say I've got somewhere important to be," he replies, his tone cryptic, leaving the officer more confused than ever. Why the secrecy? What's the real story here? The officer feels the weight of the moment, the quiet that hangs between them almost suffocating. Something is off, but he can't quite put his finger on it. He looks down at the registration, trying to dig deeper into this guy's story. The name still doesn't ring a bell, but there's something about his calm demeanor that doesn't sit right. The officer steps back, keeping a safe distance, his hand lingering near his belt, just in case. He's never had a routine stop feel this strange. The driver, seemingly aware of the tension, doesn't break eye contact. Instead, he tilts his head slightly, as if reading the officer. "You really don't know, do you?" He says softly, almost too casually, "You should be careful, officer. Things aren't always what they seem." The words hang in the air, chilling the officer to his core. Just then, the unmistakable sound of a police radio crackles to life in the officer's car, breaking the silence. He reaches for it, distracted for a moment, but as he does, he catches a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror, a shadow moving fast, too fast. A car speeding in the opposite direction. It's heading straight for them. His heart skips a beat. Could this be the distraction he's been waiting for? Or is it something more? His instincts tell him something dangerous is coming, but what exactly? He turns back to the driver, but he's already staring at the road ahead, his expression unreadable. What's about to unfold could change everything. The tension in the air thickens, and the officer realizes, whatever happens next, this is no ordinary traffic stop. The officer's grip tightens around the radio, but just as he's about to respond, the car speeding toward them skids to a halt. It's close, way too close. The tires screech, and the officer's pulse races. His eyes dart back to the driver. For a split second, he wonders if this is a coordinated move, a setup. Then, before he can react, the car doors open. Two figures step out, both armed. The officer freezes, adrenaline flooding his system. What's happening? Was this an ambush? Why hadn't he noticed them sooner? The driver in front of him doesn't flinch. He doesn't seem worried at all. In fact, his smirk only grows wider as he turns to face the officer. "I did warn you, didn't I?" he says, almost in a whisper, as if he's been expecting this moment all along. The officer's heart races as the two figures from the other car move toward him. For a second, everything feels like it's slowing down. What was going on here? Who were these people, and why was the driver so calm? Was he a part of something bigger? The officer tries to get a grip on the situation, but his mind is spinning. This wasn't a simple speeding ticket. It was something far more dangerous. Then, just as he starts to make a move, a third car comes into view. This one is different. Blacked out windows, no license plate. It pulls up behind the officer's vehicle, blocking any chance of escape. The tension is unbearable now, and the officer knows there's no turning back. Whatever happens next, this situation is about to spiral into something far beyond what he could have ever anticipated. The stakes just went through the roof. The officer's mind races, every instinct screaming that this is a setup. He's outnumbered, outgunned, and with the blacked-out car behind him, he has no escape route. He knows he has to act fast, but his body feels frozen, as if time itself has slowed down. The two armed figures are closing in, their faces masked, and the driver, the one who started all this, is still too calm, too composed. The officer's hand hovers over his weapon, but just as he's about to make a move, the driver raises a hand, signaling for the others to stop. The officer's heart skips a beat. "Not yet," the driver says, his voice oddly calm. "We're not here for you. Not today." Confused and still on edge, the officer's eyes dart to the blacked-out car. The door opens, and another figure steps out. This time, it's someone he recognizes. It's his partner, Officer Ramirez, someone he's worked with for years. But something is off about her. She walks towards him slowly, the usual warmth in her eyes replaced with cold detachment. "I'm sorry, John," she says, her voice low, almost like a whisper. "But this is bigger than you." Before he can process what she's saying, Ramirez pulls out her own weapon and points it at him. The officer's mind spins. How could she be involved? What's really going on here? He thought he knew the people he worked with, but this was a betrayal beyond anything he could have imagined. The driver, now leaning back against his car, looks satisfied. "Told you things aren't always what they seem," he says with a final, mocking grin. Just as the officer opens his mouth to speak, a voice crackles through his radio, a voice he never thought he'd hear. It's his captain, but the words that follow hit him like a punch to the gut. "John, you're on the wrong side of this. Stand down. You're surrounded." The realization hits him like a wave. Everything, the speeding ticket, the cryptic warnings, the strange calm of the driver, had been leading to this moment. He'd been set up by the people closest to him, and the truth was far darker than he could have ever imagined. The officer's hand drops from his weapon, his mind reeling as he looks at the faces around him, realizing there's no escape. Not anymore. But then, just as he starts to come to terms with the betrayal, the air shifts. A sudden, deafening explosion rips through the silence. And in that instant, everything changes. The blacked-out car is engulfed in flames, and chaos erupts around them. The officer's world spins out of control as the people he trusted, and the people he thought were enemies, become part of a bigger, more dangerous game. And in the midst of it all, one thing is clear. The twists have only just begun. The explosion shakes the ground beneath them, sending the officer stumbling back. The chaos around him is overwhelming. He can barely hear the shouting, the sounds of sirens approaching, and the crackling flames. His mind is still reeling from the betrayal, but now, in the midst of the chaos, he realizes that he's no longer the target. The real game is bigger, far more dangerous than he ever imagined. As the smoke clears, he sees Ramirez and the others disappear into the night, vanishing into the shadows, leaving him standing alone. The officer's heart pounds, but he knows one thing for sure. He's been caught in something much larger than a simple speeding ticket. He looks down at the charred wreckage of the blacked-out car, his mind racing with unanswered questions. In the end, he's left with only one truth. Nothing in his world is as it seems. And some stories, no matter how hard you try, are never meant to be solved.